Hello and a warm welcome to yet another informative episode of Market Views. It's been a minute, since we did our last recording, and we just thought, which counters can we look at today? And we thought of looking at the most liquid counters on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. That's Econet Wireless and Delta Corporation. These are the most liquid counters on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, and also constituting about 45% of the total market weight. So Econet Wireless released its financials for the year ending 28 February 2025, and Delta Corporation also released its financial for the full year ending 31 March 2025. So before we deep dive into it, perhaps let's give a precursor of Market Views. Market Views is a show where we deep dive into all things equities. If you had to look at the Zimbabwean context, the equities, that's the most vibrant capital markets instrument. As you can see in the fixed income space, there is only one listed fixed income bond, right, on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. That's Karo Mining Holdings bond. But to deep dive into these equities, we invite a panel of analysts in our analyst community so that we just unpack, share views and thoughts. And today I'm joined by my good brother, who is also a fellow analyst. So allow me to introduce him to the show today. Iain, thank you so much and welcome to Market Views.
Thank you, Kuda. It's such a pleasure being here, and it has been really a while since we did this.
Yeah,
so it's actually good to be back.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's start by looking at Econet Wireless. So I know there's been a lot of buzz in the social media last year during around September, when Starlink entered into the market, and there were a lot of views and sentiments that were shared that it was going to affect Econet, mainly in its MNO segment. Because I'm sure you recall last year on the 1st of March 2024, Econet acquired the fintech segment, meaning it now comprises of two segments, the MNO segment and the fintech segment. And for the full year ending 28 February 2025, we saw Econet recording a surge in its revenue by 23%, and the MNO constituting around 86%, and the fintech only constituting around 14%. So let's unpack this top line. If I may say, share just your commentary on the performance of Econet on the top line.
Okay, thank you, Kuda, for that good question. So I think Econet is poised for further growth despite competition from Starlink on the mobile data. Currently, Econet controls about 88% of voice traffic and 78% of mobile data traffic, and it has 72% of the total market share of mobile subscribers. So I think it's poised for further growth. I would say I forecast an 18% increase in the top line to around 750 million for the upcoming financial year, Feb 2026.
Okay, no, thank you so much. That's actually eye-opening. And of course, when we look at the income statement, we would like to go below the income statement and look at the key drivers of the bottom line as well. Because if you are to look at financial year 2023 and financial year 2024, Econet was actually on a hiatus in terms of dividend payments. We saw it was in financial distress. We saw line items such as monetary adjustments, exchange losses actually constituting over 30% of the, if you are to look at the margin of the top line. But for the recent full year financials, I think it declared an annual dividend of 1.76 US cents, which used to yield, to actually attribute a yield of over 20%. But recently, we saw it declaring the first quarter interim dividend of 0.63 US cents for the period ending 31 May 2025. And that's when we saw a rebound in share price. And currently, I'm sure the yield is attributing around 16-17%, somewhere there. So if you are to look at the bottom line, let's say in the context of investors, we just want to understand, is it sustainable? does it mean that there has been an improvement in terms of its financial footing? Is it poised to actually experience that similar performance in this current day in terms of just looking at the bottom line, its sustainability, and so?
Okay. I think at the moment I can say the bottom line is tentatively secure, and it's not fully buoyant. I cannot say it's fully buoyant in the future, because the key macroeconomic risks that affect the bottom line of Econet still exist in the economy. I'm talking about your currency volatility, regulatory uncertainty, and inflation. The threat still remains, because if you notice, the reason why Econet failed to declare dividend in 2024 and 2023, there were a lot of exchange rate losses, and also the issue with their foreign denominated debt, which they managed to pay off through a rights issue. So, but I think going forward, current stability will be key to the bottom line of Econet. If the ZIG remains stable as what we are witnessing currently, I think it will be sustainable in the short term. But in the long term, it's hard to actually predict, knowing how Zimbabwean currency issues always fluctuate.
Oh, okay, thank you. That's actually an interesting perspective. Well, perhaps let's segue and look at Delta, the beverages giant. We also saw that it recorded a 5% surge in the top line, recording mixed performance across its strategic business units, right? So now let's unpack the performance across these SBUs, and then perhaps look at what are the main drivers of the top line, and just share our thoughts with regard to this current financial year. Our projections, are we projecting some of the SBUs experiencing a turnaround, or it's likely to be the same performance that we have experienced for the prior financial year?
Okay, thank you, Kuda, for that question. So Delta has 4 main SBUs. You're looking at the beer segment, a lager beer segment, the sorghum beer segment, the sparkling beverage segment, and the wines and spirits segment. And its top line is heavily skewed towards the lager beer segment and the sorghum beer segment. For this current year, we saw that the lager beer segment contributed about 43.58% to the top line, which is the highest it has contributed since March 2022. This was also on we saw that its volumes recorded the highest volumes produced historically since it started operating. Then the sorghum beer segment, it dropped to around 28%, which is also the lowest since 2022, because it has significantly contributed over 30% to the top line.
Okay, in the
prior years. Yeah. And on the sparkling beverages side, we saw that for the first time, its contribution to the top line reached 20%. Historically, it has contributed below 20%, averaging around between 18 to 19% thereabout. Then the wine and spirits segment, it has remained relatively stable, contributing 7% to the top line.
Okay. No, thank you. So what about now that there is SWEPS? I think they're now controlling over 69% of SWEPS, right? Which is now obviously going to be added on the subsidiaries that also contribute towards the top line. And also somebody, maybe an investor who is also curious to know that since the sorghum segment was affected mainly in the exports market, the South African market and the Zambian market, and just trying to project this current financial year. So looking at those two segments right there, are we likely to see this SWEPS segment being affected by the sugar tax also? Are we likely to see a rebound in terms of sorghum beer performances, or it's likely to remain fairly flat?
Okay. So SWEPS coming in, Delta having increased its shareholding in SWEPS to around 69% and incorporating SWEPS as a subsidiary now. I think we are going to see a substantial increase in the top line. Yes, sugar tax will obviously affect SWEPS, but I think it won't be that significant. I was just looking at the volumes of SWEPS, its production. They have always managed to produce above 600,000 hectoliters of the cordial or drinks, if we may call them that. Yeah. So I think that will be a welcome addition to the top line. It will be interesting to see what margin will it contribute to the top line in the coming financial year. Then the troubles with sorghum beer in the South African and Zambian markets were emanating mainly from the power situations in those countries, especially in Zambia. The breweries would go for almost 12 hours without power. So the Zambian factory was not able to meet the demand in that market. So I think if the power situation improves in Zambia, I think we are going to see an increased volumes in Zambia and also better contribution to the top line. The South African market, it's a issue also of the brand, the Chibuku brand. Actually, it has different names in that country. So it's actually trying to improve the brand so that it's acceptable in that market and they don't see it as something that is coming out from outside. So I think if brand visibility is improved in South Africa, we are going also to witness larger volume increases there as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, maybe just rounding it up, looking at the bottom line also of Delta. I'm sure, of course, the Delta released its financials in US terms, right? So no conversions there. Earnings, they actually grew by 15.5%, and then earnings per share, a year on year, we saw a growth of around 14%. But of course, as analysts, I'm sure we look at the margins, right? Because they give a clearer picture. But let's share our thoughts with regard to our audience on the bottom line.
Okay, thank you. So we saw the bottom line actually increased by 15.5%. But I would like us to look at it from a margin perspective. Net interest margin only, net profit margin rather, only increased by 1.29% to around 14.4%. What this entails is that much of the profit was volume driven than a margin expansion. Okay, but also it is important for us to take note that the income tax increased significantly from around 3.8 million to 23.8 million. So that's a large expansion in income tax. Hence the bottom line margin contracted because of that income tax. But I think going forward, if the government actually tries to work hand in hand with corporates and maybe reduce the income tax burden.
As we've seen, actually, the group is constantly...
the group is constantly paying taxes. So if the income tax burden is reduced on Delta, I think we'll see an improvement in the net profit margin of the company.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much. Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps on our following episode, we'll look at the markets, the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, just maybe analyzing. Recently, we have seen Econet being the first VFX Econet to be listed on the foreign denominated bourse. Perhaps we might be having questions. Are we likely to see improvements in liquidity? How was the VFX performing from the inception of this year up to date? These are some of the things that we can look at, or you have specific counters that you want us to look at. If you have those, feel free to drop them down in the comment section. Then we'll prepare and we'll actually do so. So from now going onwards, we'll try to do our level best to make sure that we are consistent and we come before you and share our thoughts and views with regard to our local capital markets at the beginning of every week. But well, before we sign off, allow me just to thank my guest today. Iain, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm looking forward to have you, on the other episodes that we'll be recording.
It was such a pleasure, Kuda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, so, dear viewers, from ourselves, myself, my beloved colleague, and the crew behind the scenes, we do wish you a very fruitful and productive week. For now, we say cheers. Have a good day.